it's tough following after a trendset. Whether it be the countless Chick-fil-A sandwich clones or early attempts at duplicating Apple's iPhone success, grabbing mindshare from a perceived trailblazer can be practically impossible, even if you produce a better product. Throughout history, however, there have been exceptions to this uphill battle. Nintendo, for example, trumped Atari and was then trumped by Sony, who then got trumped by Microsoft for some time before things changed once again. Another good example is League of Legends, which has since eclipsed Dota in the multiplayer battle arena genre. This brings us to the hunting genre, where Monster Hunter has reigned supreme as the alpha dog since debuting in 2004. A different take on the online action genre popularized by Phantasy Star Online, Monster Hunter redefined that particular style of game with its highly technical combat and focus on brandishing and wearing the spoils of victory on your own person. So much so that it practically created its own new genre, where Monster Hunter flourished unopposed for years. Success, however, breeds the sincerest form of flattery. Eventually, several new titles soon stepped forth to try and take Monster Hunter's crown, such as God Eater, Toukiden, and even ex-Capcom guy Keiji Inafune's Soul Sacrifice. As someone who loved Monster Hunter way before it became cool to like it, I reacted to each announcement of a Monster Hunter clone with excitement. After playing them, however, I would always find myself thinking, well, it's not bad, but it doesn't come close to Monster Hunter. Sometimes it's due to faster combat, which makes it more accessible but not as technically rewarding as Monster Hunter's more deliberate combat. Other times the game tries to be too different from Monster Hunter, which is understandable, but also ends up missing the point about why people like the hunting genre in the first place. When I played the first Toukiden, I thought it was mechanically sound and featured awesome Oni or demon designs. The game's maps and foraging system, however, felt really lacking, almost like they were an afterthought, which hampered my enjoyment. I also did not feel as engaged with the game's gravity system. As a result, I did not approach the sequel with the same excitement I felt before playing the original. Then I started playing the campaign. That's when I noticed that Toukiden 2 added an open world component with day and night cycles. As someone who always wondered how nice Monster Hunter story mode would be if it had a campaign with open maps, this change was huge. Can't believe it, I thought to myself with a big smile on my face. They actually did it. Add a more full-fledged story, and it's like the folks behind Toukiden got a hold of my personal Monster Hunter wishlist and implemented it in their game. All of a sudden, Toukiden 2 no longer felt like a pretender or wannabe Monster Hunter title, it actually felt like its own bona fide game. Personally, I found this to be an awesome development. As someone who picked Monster Hunter Generations as my 2016 Game of the Year, I certainly have a strong affinity for Capcom's hunting game. At the same time, I also want its competitors to do well. It's good for a genre, especially one that has been dominated by one franchise for so long, when the leader is on its toes and inspired to innovate by strong competition. Plus, I wanted a solid yet different enough hunting experience that I can dally with when taking breaks from Monster Hunter. In that case, Toukiden 2 certainly brings some different things to the table. One is its own unique art style, which has that Koei Tecmo look that borrows heavily from history, specifically highly stylized interpretations of Japan's feudal past. Then there's the game's Oni or demons, which provide a nice devilish contrast to Monster Hunter's bestiality. In addition to looking different, Toukiden 2's Oni also carry over the unique mechanics from its previous games, which focuses on breaking body parts before you can damage the main body. This is one of the more interesting aspects of the game, as an Oni's behavior can change depending on the body part that you break. I ended up taking away the legs of one Oni boss, for example, and it started fighting me upside down while using its forearms as makeshift legs. Oni also can regenerate shattered limbs if you let them, so it's also important to purify a body part when you cut it off. Think of purifying as a carving mechanic of sorts that also takes out a body part from battle. This adds some strategy too, as purifying can take a long time, so you'll need to do it while also paying attention to the rampaging Oni that wants to crush you. One neat thing that Toukiden 2 throws into the mix is the Demon Hand mechanic, which initially acts as a grappling hook of sorts. In addition to reaching certain high terrain on the field map, this also lets you jump up toward higher body parts like an Oni's head, for example, to do aerial combos. That's quite helpful for, say, melee weapon users who want to get rewards from broken body parts that are normally tough to reach from the ground unless a monster is toppled. You can also use the hand to break field obstacles or absorb elements from geopulses that you can either hurl at enemies or imbue your own weapon with. The Demon Hand, however, also has more advanced uses. You have an Oni with a glowing red aura, for example, and you can slam them to the ground, which looks especially cool when done while the monster is charging. Target an Oni body part with the hand while your unity gauge is full, and you can do an Oni burial, which can be used to completely destroy certain body parts and prevent their regeneration. On top of that, add your weapon's destroyer attack, which lets you cut out a body part when your weapon gauge is full, and you can have some hilariously fun sequences, where you can take out multiple limbs one after the other. This is even better with a well-coordinated team, as I've had poor Oni who were completely limbless and desperately crawling or rolling around the field. Weapon selection, meanwhile, is quite diverse and serves up a variety of styles. You have beginner-friendly weapons like the Naginata, which features easy combos as well as a counter that can be timed once you get the hang of it. Then you have more technical weapons like the sword, which relies on mixing button taps and holds plus a cleansing sheath that buffs subsequent attacks. Gauntlets are slow to attack but can stack damage by using timing-based critical chains that get more powerful after more hits and can also use a finisher that sets foes on fire. For speed, you have double knives that can attack on the move via special dash and even has a Schwarzbruder type tornado attack a la G Gundam. Nissan! Or is it Kyoji Nissan or something like that? I guess. As someone who started Monster Hunter as a gunner and mained firearms until the Insect Glaive came out, however, I found myself using the rifle for the bulk of my time with Toukiden 2. With unlimited bullets and sustained as well as quick reload functions, you can pretty much concentrate on firing at enemy nodes or weak points in Toukiden 2. There's also a grenade combo where shooting it can trigger different effects depending on the ammo you use. Hitting a grenade with a sniper bullet, for example, will make an enemy node turn blue, which makes it more susceptible to damage. If all that wasn't enough, the game also features a Mitama system that gives you access to various special attacks and buffs depending on which ones you use. Obtained from defeating tough Oni, this Mitama contains the soul of a deceased hero from history and can be equipped to either your weapon, armor, or demon hand. Mitama equipped with a weapon allow you to use one of 4 special moves depending on its trait. These range from attack and defense buffs to healing yourself or dealing more damage to your Oni body parts. Other Mitama can prevent you from falling in battle or even resurrect you when you bite the dust after fulfilling certain conditions. Equipping Mitama that contain heroes who have a relationship or have similar traits also lead to different combination boosts, such as a longer life bar or preventing your skills from being blocked. Combat itself feels like it's somewhere in the middle of the more methodical Monster Hunter or faster-paced God Eater mechanics. It's basically a happy medium for folks who think that Monster Hunter combat is too technical while God Eater is a bit more on the spammy side. One thing that Monster Hunter fans might find sacrilegious is the presence of full monster lock-on, not just on the main monster body, but individual body parts. Personally, I'm used to manual aim, so I don't use lock-on as much for gunning, especially when doing grenade combos or shooting specific nodes. Lock-on can make the game easier though. Like God Eater, Toukiden 2 also lets you use partner AI, which is surprisingly competent in this game. There are still times when the AI would have a brain fart, but for the most part they actually do a really good job. One thing that Toukiden 2 has a leg up on Monster Hunter is its campaign. In addition to the aforementioned open world mechanics, Toukiden 2 also has a full-fledged tale with flashy cutscenes and a complete story that I actually enjoyed going through. On a side note, I admittedly chuckled at an online comment describing the story as a parody of the recent US elections. So true. Granted, the tale can get tropish at times. I mean, how many Japanese games have seriously used the main character as an amnesia plot at this point? Ultimately, though, I developed an affinity with its cast, including the goofy professor and tiny Machina warrior Tokitsugu. As someone who loves campaigns in video games, it's the type of story mode that I wish Monster Hunter would have, as it has always been the main weakness of that otherwise stellar series. One potential downside for the game, especially for newcomers to the genre, is its breadth of systems and information that you have to learn. While the game has an excellent tutorial for weapons and demon hand control, things like Mitama usage, grenade effects, and a whole slew of other system mechanics would overwhelm and confuse most folks. I also miss the dynamic enemy movement from Monster Hunter, as Oni boss fights typically limit you within a contained sphere. The open world sections, meanwhile, while positive overall, suffer from some of the same problems I've seen in other open world games. These include fetchy quests and having to traverse large areas repeatedly to get from point A to point B, including areas where bosses respawn and must be fought all over again, even after you've unlocked checkpoints that you can teleport to. At the very least, it can be a time-consuming process. At its worst, it can be an annoying pain, particularly when you haven't purified the miasma in a region yet and basically run out of time and faint from miasma poisoning because you had to essentially go through a boss rush involving several Oni one after the other. Other minor niggles include the camera wonking out in tight spaces, during aerial combos, and certain boss fights, like the giant mudfish eel-looking creature. It's also easy to accidentally do a demon burial when you don't mean to when the unity gauge is full. One recurring problem for me is that I did not feel as captivated once again by the weapon and armor crafting part of the game, which has been a problem for me since the first title. Bosses also aren't as technically challenging as Monster Hunter, and most of the difficulty doesn't come from their patterns, but how hard they hit at higher levels. All that being said, I enjoyed my experience with Toukiden 2, which surprisingly devoured way more time from my schedule than I thought it would. Monster Hunter still continues to be king for me overall, particularly from a mechanical or technical perspective. Toukiden 2, however, is a much closer second now than its predecessor ever was, or any Monster Hunter clone for that matter. Even after finishing the campaign, there's still a lot to do, including online, and I constantly find myself being lured back to play it. That and occasionally thinking, man, I wish Monster Hunter had this feature. For a self-avowed big Monster Hunter fan, the fact that this game now competes for my time with Capcom's Hunting franchise is the highest compliment I can give it.